Welcome to Knife Thoughts. This video is going to be my full review of this knife, and this is the Jack Wolf Knives, the Benny. And so this is the third model, but really the fourth run of modern or one-hand opening and locking knives that Jack Wolf Knives has come out with. Now I say that because they actually have done two different runs of the Gunslinger, but there has only been the three models: the Gunslinger, the After Hours, and now the Benny. So these more modern knives from Jack Wolf Knives are really cool because I love traditional knives. I love that Jack Wolf Knives slip joints are based off of traditional patterns. This is just the one that I grabbed, and maybe not the greatest example of that. Here is a Jack Wolf Knives slip joint that's based off of a dogleg pattern, but they're based off of traditional knife patterns. And I love traditional knives. It's really what drew me into the knife world as deep as I've gotten here. And so I really appreciate that Ben of Jack Wolf Knives really takes the inspiration from those traditional knives and brings it into more modern interpretations of the slip joints. And then specifically here for this, the Benny, does a really good job of still keeping those inspirations, the traditional look of the knives, the look of the traditional patterns, and translating them into even more modern versions with a lock, a clip, and one-hand opening. And so I've really enjoyed the other models that they have done so far. Again, the After Hours, which is a coffin-handled Barlow. So really nice. I love Barlows, as you might know from watching my channel. So really great knife. And then the Gunslinger, which is a gun stock. Awesome knife, really cool, styles that they've done on this. Particularly, I love this version that I got, which is the wood and polished titanium. So I've really enjoyed these. I've carried them a lot. I carry, this year, if I've not been carrying a Sabenza, I'm usually carrying one of these modern, one-hand opening knives from Jack Wolf Knives. So I was excited to see another kind of example, another pattern translated from the slip joint world into the modern world by Ben. And as I mentioned in my unboxing, when he reached out, because there was a new knife coming up here this month, he asked, what I thought was coming, and the first thing that I guessed was actually a one-hand opening version of the K9. So I think that would be really cool, really unique. But then the second thing was a one-hand opening of the Benny's clip. So that is what the Benny is translated from, is the Benny's clip. So I'll show you that here. There has only been one run of the Benny's clip so far. I'm sure they'll do it again. But this is the Benny's clip. This is my version here. And the Benny's clip is Ben's take on the Lanny's clip, which is a Bose design. So it's actually not as old a pattern as a lot of the knives that are other Jack Wolf Knives models are based off of. So the Lanny's clip that this is based off of is a relatively modern knife. It's not one that has been around for 100 years or anything like that. But I think that it's similar enough that if you took, maybe a Lanny's clip with a little bit more traditional design or a traditional construction, pins rather than screws, and showed it to someone 100 years ago, they wouldn't bat an eye at it. And that's because it's really kind of a jumbo trapper. So it's a large size trapper. Now I say that, and it's less so the actual length of the handle and more the ratio of dimensions. So it's relatively thick handle as compared to some other trappers, like the classic case trapper. You can see it's a little bit less slender, and it also doesn't have a hump in the handle. So it is just a curved jack here that has kind of a trapper shape. And then one of the defining characteristics is this heavy blade. So it has a saber ground blade. It's not a full flat grind. It has a saber grind. It has a flat here for a nail nick, and then a nice long swedge for this really abrupt belly on the clip point. Now that's something that you do see on, you know, other Laney's clips, but Ben has really kind of kicked up to the next level, as he often does with his clip point designs. And I think it's really cool, you know, fits in with the design language that he uses on his other designs. So just kind of a, you know, a very fitting for Jack Wolf Knives interpretation of this Laney's clip. A larger trapper, or a thicker, kind of heavier trapper, heftier trapper, with a saber ground blade and a kind of abrupt swooping clip point. And that's what the Benny is also. So the Benny, same type handle, same type blade. You can see it still has that saber grind. It still has a nice big swedge and a really abrupt belly to the clip point here. And I want to show you in direct comparison to the Benny's clip. So you can see that it's a little bit more abrupt. You have a little bit more kind of, I don't want to call it chisel-like, but kind of chisel-like of a tip. And it's already relatively abrupt here on the Benny's clip, but you can see it's even more so on the Benny. And so what that amounts to is that it is a relatively thick tip, slightly thicker than the Benny's clip. But then if you look at the other models here, you can see the tip, maybe I can show you this way, is much thicker on the Benny than on the After Hours or on the Gunslinger. And so there's upsides and downsides to that. Hopefully I don't cut my finger here in the middle of the video. But there's upsides and downsides to that. If you need I think that there's, you know, it's maybe not going to be the best at piercing, right? So like, it's not going to be the best knife in the world for piercing. I don't really think that that's what most people are going to be carrying this knife for, is its piercing ability. But it will make that tip a little stronger. So if you do, you know, kind of do any more hard cutting with it, and you can use it in this interesting kind of chisel-like way. So you can do some kind of scraping or push cutting. And I actually did use it a little bit like that. I have carried this knife pretty much since I got it, and have used it a good bit for yard work over the holiday weekend here. And it worked really well, and I was using it kind of hard. And I did appreciate that it is a heftier knife. And that's really the big thing with this knife. Now, it isn't really longer than the other one-hand opening models from Jack Wolf Knives. So I'm going to give you a little bit more direct comparisons here. So there is the After Hours, and here is the Gunslinger. It's not significantly longer. It's pretty close to the same size as both of them, but it feels heftier when you're using it because a little bit taller handle, a little bit thicker blade, so it really kind of thwacks out there. And it worked well for, you know, cutting limbs. I was cutting limbs off and things like that. Now I will say that the pivot got a little bit looser. I started to feel a little bit of blade play in it. So I took the screws out and put some Loctite on it and tighten it down. One of the nice things about these is that it seems like you can tighten them down pretty hard, and you know, it won't hurt the action. In fact, it's very, very, very smooth. Because of that nice thick blade, you can get it to pretty much completely drop closed, and it's still super, super smooth. You probably noticed I've been doing this kind of over the front flip here. It's not something I actually did previously until seeing that actually Donnie was doing that in one of the live videos on Facebook with this knife. And it works really well. So you can definitely tighten this down, make sure there's no blade play, and still have great action. And there is no blade play. It didn't come with blade play, I just developed it from me using it kind of hard. But no blade play now. Locks up solidly. Relatively early lockup, maybe like 30%, 20-30%, something like that. But you know, passes a spine whack test. no problem, and no side-to-side play, and locks up really, really solidly forward and back. And then again, very, very smooth. So I do appreciate that you can kind of wrench these down a little bit and not have blade play and still have great action. And that's due to the bearings in there. So it is definitely different than a washer action, which again, I've been carrying Sebenzas a lot recently, and it's very, very different feeling. Now, speaking of the action, there's a bunch of different ways to open this. You already saw me do this kind of finger front flip here. Then, of course, you have the thumb front flip. And I've talked about before how these Jack Wolf knives, modern knives, have really kind of helped convert me to front flippers. I think that Ben does a great job of designing them so that they're easy to front flip. I've had no issues at all with this one front flipping. Nice jimping on there, just really easy and fun to front flip, to be completely honest. Now, the blade sits relatively lower in this handle as compared to the other one-hand opening knives from Jack Wolf Knives. So this is the other version of the gunslinger that I have. You know, because of the shape of the gunslinger, you've got a little bit more exposed there, particularly towards the upper end. It's also a little bit longer of a long pull on the gunslinger because of this kind of smaller flat area on the Benny. And then same deal, a little bit of a longer long pull on the after hours, and it sits up a little bit higher because of the blade shape, really. So that means that, you know, it's a little bit easier to get at the long pull on those models. But I found that, and actually what Ben suggested, is you just have to get a little bit lower towards the bottom of the long pull, or really towards the tip, and it's pretty easy. You can also thumb roll it like so, and then you can do the middle finger flick like so, and you can probably tell I'm getting down towards the bottom of that long pull. Now, when you pull it out of your pocket, that's actually easier to do because, you know, you're grabbing it by the butt end and then getting to here and getting on that long pull. I do slip off of it every now and then still, to be completely honest, because you have to, you know, get in there, and I've got relatively thick fingers, to be completely honest. I think maybe if you had a little bit more normal size fingers, you wouldn't have as much trouble. But it is easy to get at. And in fact, I showed this knife to my wife. She's pretty tired of seeing knives. She's super supportive, but gets to see a lot of knives for somebody that's not a knife person. And she was actually impressed by how easy it is to open this. That was the first thing that she said. She also seemed to like the covers here, and funnily enough, I actually just told Ben earlier today, I was showing this knife to my son, and asked if he liked it. He's a toddler, he's a little bit under 2 years old, and I said, do you like this knife? And he said, like pretty knife. So this is toddler approved, the Mars Valley carbon fiber, which is what this is. I'll show you that on here real quick, Mars Valley. And this is the tube with the art, in case you didn't see my unboxing. Some really kind of comic book or video game style art with the Hadouken going on. And so, you know, even a child can recognize that it's a good looking knife. And I think that this Mars Valley is super cool. I'm really happy I went with this version. There's other cool versions also. I think the crosshatch titanium is super cool looking, but I prefer to go for the not full titanium knives on these one hand opening, because it gives you this, what they call bolster lock. So that way you don't see the whole actual lock bar, you only see the part that's up at the bolster. It keeps that traditional look, or that look like a slip joint, a little bit more to my eye, and I do appreciate that. So I think it's a really great looking knife. It actually has cut really well also. That's one thing I wasn't sure about. With it being a thicker blade and a saber grind, it still cuts really nicely. Probably not as much of a slicer as, you know, some of the other Jack Wolf knives, but it's still going to cut perfectly fine. And just a really cool knife. It's one that I've really enjoyed getting to check out. I think that this, as much or more, I would say more than the other Jack Wolf knives, feels like it could be your full, you know, only knife, even if you do prefer having a modern knife, even if you are someone like me who likes to carry a larger modern knife along with your traditional knife, which is what I typically do. I think that this feels the most of any of the Jack Wolf knives so far like it can fill that role really for anybody. I mean, unless, you know, you carry a Cold Steel or Spada XL or something like that, it won't fill that role. But I think that this is going to be pretty much as much knife as you're going to need for most people on a daily basis. And it does still give you that kind of classy feel that the traditional Inspiration really gives, at least, again, to me. So I have really enjoyed getting to check out the Benny from Jack Wolf Knives. I think this is going to be a hit. Everybody loves a Lanny's clip. And so make sure you check them out. They are dropping here this Friday at dealers. I always suggest traditional pocket knives or knives ship free, and you can find links to those dealers below. Make sure you use those links. That helps out the channel. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel, click the bell and select all so you know when I post new videos. I just hit 6,500 subscribers as well as 600 email newsletter subscribers. I'm doing a giveaway for that, so you can check my posts to see that, as well as on my website. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.